When you start a project, know that I need to finish this. There's got to be an end, or there won't be.
Yeah.
It's like the number one thing I can say.
The hard part is the end is when it's perfect or next to.
Okay, that's the other thing I was
And
going to
that's
say.
never.
Perfectionism, you have to let that go.
In this episode of For Goodness Sake, we have on Jenae Wallin, an expert in project management with tons of experience managing and building teams and startups. She, alongside our returning guest, Aaron Moreno, joined me in discussing the common hurdles, both mentally and physically, holding freelancers and solopreneurs back from scaling their businesses and ruling the world. I hope you enjoy the episode.
So, Jenae,
Hi.
welcome to the show. Would you introduce yourself? Kind of tell us kind of what you do.
Yeah, so my name's Jenae Wallin, to be specific.
Yeah.
I'm a project manager. I work for a tech software company, and we run and operate our own blockchain and also video game that runs on our blockchain. So it's a pretty interesting company, and we can talk more about it. But very new. I've been with the company for almost 2 years now, but I'm newer to the blockchain Web3 world. But my team actually works on regular Web 2 software that sits on top of the blockchain. So I can break that down for you if you don't. If that's kind of confusing.
Yeah,
to some
you can
people.
help me too. Yeah.
But basically, we are building software applications, regular Web 2 software applications that run on our blockchain and support our video game that we have. So it's interesting.
Is there a token or any sort of? Is that involved in the financing situation of
There is some, and that's the stuff that I don't really want to get into too much, but we do have our own token and everything it's a startup. So this is the second startup company I've worked for, and I kind of love that world. It's interesting. It's fast paced. It's fun. It's not super traditional and by the book, which I kind of like.
It's kind of innovative.
Yes.
Web3, the pioneering movement. Yeah.
It's an interesting area. Before I came to the company that I work for now, I worked for another startup, and we built an application. They're called AdWallet. No longer a company, but I was there for about 5 years.
Did you start with the company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Day one, first employee.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how did you get integrated?
Okay, so this goes back even further. So my background is actually in advertising and marketing.
Okay.
So I was a creative. I worked at an advertising agency as a copywriter. So writing commercials, radio spots, TV spots, print ads, billboards, all that type of thing, like traditional and digital writing.
Yeah.
So I have that creative side of me, but I also have like an innate just will to organize and plan. It's kind of my personality.
Yeah.
And so when I started working for AdWallet, we hired a CTO who was like a big wig dude. He used to work for Amazon.
Oh, wow.
He worked on the team that had the first team that invented the first Kindle. So he was like huge mentor to me. And so when we hired him at AdWall, it was a pretty big move for the company because we're a small startup, but we needed to build an application that was going to be strong and be able to, grow. And so when we got him on the team, my role with AdWallet was very sort of random. Like when I first started working there, I didn't really have a role. I was just kind of doing whatever he needed me to do. Yeah. And we kind of self-titled me as the GSD director, the Get Shit Done director, because we didn't really know like what to title me. But really, that's a project manager.
Project manager, exactly.
So whenever we hired on this guy from Amazon, like huge tech guy, has so much experience, he was like, "You're a project manager." Like, so I didn't go to school for it, but I was mentored into that role. And he was like, "That's who you are. That's what you're doing. Let me just show you how to do it."
Wow. So he even gave you tips and all that stuff just from his experience at Amazon, or?
Oh, totally. And all the other companies he's worked at. This is a guy who goes, he builds up a team, he builds software, and then he leaves on to his next project. Because that's where he's at
like
in his
developer
life.
in the actual sense of the general sense.
Oh, totally. Yeah. He goes from project to project and makes it great, and then leaves.
Okay,
onto
so
the
he
next thing.
didn't stay with the ad wallet the whole time.
Not the whole time, but COVID happened and a lot of things happened during that time, which we couldn't afford him anymore. And so that's kind of why he wasn't there. But he actually went to the company that I'm at now.
Oh, really?
So he was there for a year. Same
Was
thing.
that your in?
That was one of my in.
Okay.
So another guy went there too.
Oh, from Ad Wallet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we kind of all moved over to.
I feel like that's how it is, right?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
Especially if you're like having success, like pluck that team and recreate it again, replicate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
It's like
awesome.
we're doing great, and you know who your strong players are, and like if you work well together as a team, and then you kind of just keep those people, keep them going. It's like the best way.
So we had Aaron on a few weeks back, and we were talking just about all of the different things, the struggles, business, this and that. And he was like, "Oh, we should have Jenae on." And so that's kind of why. So I wanted to pick your brain on a lot of different things, specifically in regards to like for myself, selfishly, but hopefully other people would, gain some useful information.
Cool.
By the way, to finish up that story, Ad Wallet, did you say that it was the fate of what ended up happening? Not specifics, but
So the company ended up closing just recently in the past like month or so, actually,
wow.
like fully shutting down. But basically, we ended up being a team. I think at one point we had a team of engineers, was almost like 16 to 20 engineers. And we built the application from the ground up. But ultimately, just getting enough advertisers on the application was the biggest struggle.
okay.
Funding to advertise our own application was an issue. COVID really kicked us in the butt. So it was a huge rise and then a pretty slow fall. But I would say, like, from what I've heard from the CEO, who I'm still friends with, who still works at my company now.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. And I worked with him at the ad agency. I didn't wrap that back. So actually,
So you've been with this person for a long time.
Yeah, I see him as also as a mentor and a good friend, but he was my creative director at the ad agency that I was at. Then he had this idea for this app, and he brought me on because he knew that I'm like a get shit done type person, right? Mm-hmm. And then from there, he brought me over to the company we're at now.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, just out of curiosity, any big takeaways from the rise and slow descent from Ad Wallet that you would apply to maybe other startups or anybody who's listening who is interested in that culture? Like, I mean, I know it's a big question, but like,
a good question.
Is there anything that's like, man, if I would do that different now, or this is something that I would encourage those who are maybe hungry for that startup culture?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a really good question for the CEO, but I think what we probably should have done better in the beginning is, we raised a lot of money, but we also spent a lot of money. And I think that's...
You were like spending as much as was coming in?
And I think a lot of startups have that same problem where they raise a lot of money. It's like, oh, dang, we got all this money in the bank. Let's advertise here. Let's do that. Let's do this. But you almost have to just be more strategic about who you bring on, and maybe even find like a person more of strategic mind who can decide how to spend that money in a more logical, sensible way. And I think we spent too much money early on, and I think it could have lived a little bit longer past COVID, the hard times that we went through.
Interesting.
Have you ever seen that TV show Silicon Valley?
Yeah.
I love it because
So
they get funded, and the first thing they buy is a margarita maker.
Oh my gosh.
And then they have to return it because they end up having spending way too much money, and it's just so funny. But that's a good call out, because I think, it's kind of sad, but I think, startups, it's kind of like a rock star. I don't know if you would say like a community. So it's like you get funded, then it's like, oh, let's go hard and spend money quick, or let's be a little careless. So you're not the first person that said that. And I think that's a good call out, especially just like, I mean, if you have a small startup, just a couple people, and you start gaining traction, it's always like, okay, how much can we do on our own, or how can we keep costs really cheap first and foremost? And then just those margins are so important. At least that I've noticed more and more as I see friends get in that world, for sure.
Did you remember you and me trying to do a startup? We LARPed pretty bad.
Yeah. Honestly,
we tried.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Totally. We had a pretty good MVP, and I think we were so excited about it. I think we had maybe a weak link in the chain, which is also maybe a part that is all, if you're going to be all on the same page with the same vision, is super important. But
that's huge too.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the problem of Ad Wallet. I still believe in the idea today I think honestly, it's before its time. I think
Can you explain kind of what it is?
Yeah, so it was an application where advertisers, let's say this podcast wants to advertise, get more listeners. You put up a commercial on it, just a normal 30-second ad, and at the end of watching the video, the user would have to prove that they paid attention to it and answer a question about it. And it's called Paid Attention Ad Wallet, and you get paid for watching it. And then eventually it's real money, but it's an advantage to the advertiser and the user because they are getting paid to watch it.
It's not like someone's clicking off the TV at the middle of a football game.
Right. And then also for the advertiser, they know you're actually listening to their ad, but they're also targeted ads. So you're not just getting something you're not interested in. You fill out a profile and you answer a lot of questions like demographic and psychographic information about yourself. So you're only getting ads that are hyper targeted to you. So maybe you're interested in them. The other thing that's cool is like, you're watching YouTube and you see an ad and you're just waiting for the skip button, right? With Ad Wallet, you decide when you want to watch the ads. So you get a text message that you have one, and then it stays in your wallet for, I believe, like 48 hours.
Oh,
so
really?
You can go back to watch it when you want to.
So you're sent advertisements that are that make sense or kind of in line with
curated
your thing.
for you, yeah.
And then you watch them and you get paid. Where does the money come from? Is it the advertisers' money? Okay, so the advertiser's paying and you guys are taking a tax off of that or something?
Yes. So the user gets 50 cents. The user was getting 50 cents every time they watched and answered the question correctly. If they got the question wrong, they just have to watch it one more time to try to answer it correctly. We even expanded into surveys, but you're not getting bombarded with ads that you don't care about. They're based on your profile, and then like I said, it's like you decide when. And it's funny. I think our first approach to when we first started was like, let's make it like we're going to rebel against traditional advertising. Like, we're not just going to be in your face with ads. You get to kind of decide and own your experience and own your time and attention, which is pretty cool. It's like you take control of your attention but I don't know if the world is ready for that. Like,
it's interesting. Yeah. There's two things that I think is very interesting about that. There's also the basic attention token in the crypto world, Web3. BAT isn't that based off of Brave browser? Is that not there?
Yeah.
So they integrated something similar, right? Mm-hmm. Where you watch ads and you get paid in the token, not in money.
Yeah.
And now you can redeem the token for money relative to whatever,
conversion rates aren't great, but yeah.
And so that was interesting. It was an interesting way of using, but the interesting thing to me is attention and time. So in the entrepreneurial world, I've heard two things. I've heard marketing. I've heard it defined in this way: is the generous act of helping others find what they need or want. It's a nice spin on marketing.
Sounds very nice.
Love that.
It's the generous act of helping others find what they need.
It's written by a marketer, I believe.
I imagine so.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'm sold.
It's usually pure evil is what a lot of people
think. A lot
think.
of it is.
Right.
But if you think about it, it's interesting. If you get on Twitter, the ads just have zero effect, right? It's just like, I can sense. You just scroll right past. You're on Instagram. Some of them are actually really good. And, a lot of good products are found through there. I don't know what they've done differently. And maybe it's just the aesthetic of the app and the brands that they purvey are really in your niche. But they actually do fulfill that definition in a sense. Have you guys ever bought anything from an Instagram ad?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They know me too well.
Yeah. And that's, so I see both sides of it because, again, I came from the advertising world where I was creating ads that I was trying to get people's attention based on their how creative they are, how interesting they are, how relatable they are, right?
So you were doing that. You were trying to help, connect the advertisers with the people. Yeah.
And I was the machine. I was part of the machine. And then to be on the other end where it's like, screw that. Only watch ads on your time and your attention and get paid for them like you should. Instead of giving all the millions of dollars to media companies, put it in your pocket. Like, that was the whole theory, which I still believe in and think it's super cool. It's just, like I said, I think ahead of its time.
I think so. I think that the whole Web3 world is changing the way businesses relate to people and the business model, like YouTube, right? The advertisement model where the advertiser approaches YouTube and the user will watch something, and it's kind of it's kind of the old model. It seems as if the Web3 world is really trying to innovate that and making it less. It's kind of exactly what your ad wallet was doing, is making them more relevant. Elon said the same thing, because he's trying to increase his ad revenues to make Twitter profitable or X profitable. Obviously, so he's got kind of a bias there. But I do think there's an element of truth to that, where there are people out there that, if they could find a more affordable shoe that fits whatever it is, marketing can be...
They want to know about it.
Good. Yeah, exactly. It's not an exclusive evil, but I think because we see the excesses of it, and it really is an exploitable thing of people's psychology and all these different things.
Yeah.
Sadly. But I think that there is a pure way. The other thing that it reminds me of, attention, is this idea of time is your greatest asset. Totally. And so it is valuable. Time and attention is one of our most valuable things. Now, of course, you're trading your time and your attention for, maybe you could be doing other things with it, but if you're trading it in monetary value, it makes sense because money is a measurement of value. Anyways, just some thoughts on that.
It's true.
I wanted to ask, because I'm struggling personally with managing my time. So, and I think a lot of people out there probably in the freelance world, you've helped me with this quite a bit. Scheduling out your week, scheduling out your days, putting time limits on things. I'm really not good at this. This is really a hard thing for me.
Yeah.
I have tasks that I have to get done each week, but they're still not really designated in a planner or, something like that. Is there any advice in that world of project management that you could maybe share?
Yeah, totally. I think it's difficult being a creative in managing time.
Chorus says that, yeah.
I think,
I definitely experienced that.
I think I know firsthand because I was one. But in the role that I was in, there was also in the advertising, I don't know if you know how it all kind of breaks down, but in an ad agency, there's a person called a traffic manager. Essentially, it's a project manager. And this person is, now that I think about it, that's what it is. It's a person who is prioritizing the work, telling me at the time what to do, when to do it.
A traffic manager.
They're called traffic managers.
Interesting.
So they're just managing deadlines and traffic, right? Like imagine they're a plane.
Organizing attention.
Yeah. And so this was at the ad agency that I was at. And I was a creative, and I then did not have the capacity to manage my own time because I had a different hat on. I was using a different side of my brain, right? I was trying to be creative. I was thinking about ideas for this campaign, that campaign. I was writing scripts. I was rewriting scripts. And so when I had someone thinking about that for me and giving me, do this project first, then do this, then do that, I didn't have to worry about it. So
that helps. My wife helps me with this because when I'm in a project mode and I'm working on something, I don't have sacrifice or limits. I want to hit the zone, and I want to go as far and as long as I possibly can. And so to set limits on that is stop, go. It's so hard for me to do that.
It'll be surprising too if you set those limits and what you can achieve in that time. I thought it was interesting because funny enough, where I learned, and I'm still not great at it, but where I was first challenged with time management was actually when I worked at Apple. I had a manager write me a review and basically said, your time management is very poor because you're not conscious of it. And I remember taking that as a challenge. We used this really cool book called Lominger, which talked about competencies and time management being one of them, what it looked like as a skill, underused or overused. And I was referred to this book, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, but maybe I can throw it in the show notes or something. But it was a book that talked about, it had a lot of leadership qualities in there, but it says, how you view time is so essential to, how intentional you are. And it gave big chunks of time. Okay, morning, midday, evening. Then it's smaller. Okay, 3-hour blocks, break your day into quarters. Then before you know it, I was thinking of time in 15-minute increments, which is a lot. You can't really divide it up that much and be that effective. But even now, like I'm in a world where, you know, doing software engineering where it's both sides of the brain, which I really like. There's a creative element to it, but there's also a procedural element.
Totally.
And if you can match those two and be effective, it's really, because you have a customer still who's like, oh, I need a deadline, where I'm like, oh, I can do all these really cool, creative, abstract ways to write code. And then realizing like, oh no, ultimately there's a deadline. You always have a customer.
The deadline always is Lord with me even, but it will bump up on the priority list what I need to do. Like if somebody's like complaining, you know, or, you know, for the most part, I'm pretty good at things, but because it's always based on the urgency of something, it's like, oh, what fire do I need to put out now?
Right.
And so I'm always scrambling. And then when I focus on that one, the other ones are falling through. And versus, I think kind of what you're saying is having this discipline and this consciousness of your time, and then managing your time wisely and intentionally. Yep. That's just not a native thing to me. This is something I'm personally having to really struggle through.
Gosh, I have so many things I'm thinking of. But to your first point, like I think, sorry, what was I going to say? Time, you know, people say, I'll make time for that. I'll make time for that.
Yeah.
I hate that quote because you can't make time.
Mm-hmm.
Time is not infinite. Time is This is how much you have, and you need to figure out how it's limited.
And it's very valuable.
And it's very valuable. So I agree. I think you're saying all the right things. And I also think that it's not impossible to be a creative and be someone who can manage time, but it is something you have to practice and something you have to learn, like kind of like how you have, Aaron. But I would suggest like when you start a project, knowing that there's thinking about an end to it. Because I know how you said you kind of just like let yourself be open, but always like when you start a project, know that I need to finish this. There's got to be an end or there won't be.
Yeah.
It's like the number one thing I could say.
The hard part is the end is when it's perfect or next to.
Okay. That's the other thing I was going to say.
Never.
Perfectionism, you have to let that go.
Yeah. That's really hard because that means that you then have to sacrifice. And in art, it's like, oh my, compromising. And that's really hard for me.
Yeah, I could totally see that being creative. But perfectionism, you have to put that out the window because then it's going to be really difficult to finish anything. But I think, you know, you have to think of things like Aaron's saying in bite size, like take that big project or that big idea and break it down into smaller thoughts, smaller ideas, and also have a goal in mind. What's the goal? And always refer back to that goal, right? Like, this is what I'm trying to do. Have I done that? You know, and break the big project into small little 15-minute thoughts or increments. And you kind of have to be disciplined. Like, it's just like everything else in life, like going to the gym, you know, eating healthy. It's just about being super disciplined.
Is that when you were saying that your manager or somebody had said that you were not good at managing your time? What would be like a good example of his observation?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things was we'd have set tasks and it says, okay, in this next hour, I want you to get X, Y, and Z done. And a big thing was the follow-up and said, cool, how many of those things did you get done? And I'd be like, I got like 2 out of the 4. And it was just like, okay, so you accomplished 50% of what I set out for you. Are you holding yourself to a standard to still have the quality, you know, accomplishments of this task, but getting them all done? Keep that in mind because I think you're just kind of like letting it fall in your lap versus being strategic and planning and attacking it. And that was really an interesting thing in my mind is like I could go out to do a task with intentionality and I'd be like, man, I can't do those 4 things in this hour. That's impossible. But then I didn't kind of have that standard for myself. And I was sharing this with Chad earlier, but there's a technique that I've been following, this Pomodoro technique. And essentially it's 25 minutes of focus time, 5-minute break. There's 4 rounds of that. And then for the last break, it's a 25-minute break. So you get a longer break. And it's weird because I saw how effective I am because I want to get in the first 25-minute timer get this block done. And then I started realizing I'm pushing myself because I'm kind of racing against a clock. And it seems like it would be stressful, but it isn't.
Can you give me an example of like what project you might be working on and how that practically looks?
Yeah. So let's say, for example, so being a software engineer, typically we'll do a couple of things. Software is in a couple different states. It's either in like a full development state, it's in a maintenance state or it's in a state where we're fixing bugs or, software.
Refactoring.
Refactoring code and fixing or, updating things. So, for example, like in a current project, I have a couple tickets that are feature ads. So it's saying, okay, I want to be able to get one bug done, one fix, and this one feature ad, and I want to be able to run it through a little bit of testing. And so that's kind of like, okay, depending on the ticket too, I've been, 10 years into the software industry world, I know my capabilities, so I can see a ticket and read it and kind of give me a timeline for that.
Yeah,
so a more
huge.
complex ticket, it's like, okay, this is actually going to probably take me 4 of these Pomodoro series, or this will literally take me 3 days worth of work. But taking it in bite-sized pieces, like Jenae said, it's like, okay, at least I'm going to get this function written. I'm going to know what data I'm working with, and then kind of just get the pieces of the puzzle together. I'll say that one of the things I've noticed is like my focus feels a lot better too, having those like bite-sized pieces. There's this idea of like, you have a jar, and the first thing you want to do to maximize the jar is you put rocks in there.
The pickle theory, right?
I think
it's called the pickle theory.
The pickle theory.
Pickle jar theory.
Yeah. So, and then the idea is that the big things, the rocks, you put those in there first, then you fill it with pebbles. Yep. And then lastly, sand, until it's, the vessel's completely full with no gaps and you've gotten everything done. So I'm like, okay, in the first couple blocks of this, focused time, I'm going to knock out those blocks. Let me identify those big rocks. Then let's find those pebbles. Are these things that I can do? I'm sorry, employer, if you're hearing this, but if I'm on a meeting, and I'm like, okay, I can just listen in. I'm going to do these pebbles, where these other things take my full focus. And then sand is stuff that's kind of like, okay, wrapping up the day.
Make it a little nicer.
Exactly.
Add a little extras, clean it up.
That's one of the things too, like with the creative world, at least I've noticed, is like, give yourself an hour to accomplish something. Write it. I think even too, we could relate to this with music. Like, hey, I've got an hour. I want to just write some music. I'm just going to riff around, and you try as much as you can. Then you come back to it a couple days later and you're like, oh, wow, I like this part, but I definitely have a better idea for that here. And I think with anything creative, I always remember them saying, and it's like this with software, songs never completed. It's either just abandoned or put into the wild. So, and I think that's how a lot of products are. Yeah. So
I have to pause.
Got to poop.
No, there's a mouse.
Shut up.
Oh,
there he is.
I see him.
Oh, wow.
That's cute.
What do we do about it?
I'm going to chase them off.
I don't.
He's about to go in your backpack, Aaron. Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh. Is he around the backpack?
He's right behind the backpack. He's behind the bag right there.
Can I open it up? Open them up this way? So sorry for the mishap there. I just, from my peripheral vision, I saw a mouse on the floor. That was there last week that Chorus did not warn me about. So we had to scare it off. It might come back. I don't know. I guess we got to put some mouse traps up, but we got mice in the studio, at least one.
I'll just start peeing in the corners of the office to establish a territorial perimeter.
Yeah.
And nothing will come around.
Yeah, this is his place.
It's
you
actually,
guys just came on his territory.
It's true.
His turf.
It's Chorus's fault because he brought chicken.
I did. I brought a sandwich in, so I'm feeding him now.
Ratatouille.
So, did you want to finish the thought? Did you have a thought?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
But start again, and it'll come back to me.
Okay,
I'm sure.
we'll get it going. So you were saying Pomodoro. Is that an abbreviation for something?
No, I actually heard about it from my project lead, and he wrote an app to have this technique. It's not a new technique, but he was like, I believe in it so much, and I want to write an app, and I think it's a great practice app. And then so he started telling me about it, and then I did some research, and so I just felt like, man, how many times are you working and you like pick up your phone and you're like, oh man, I broke concentration. I saw this podcast. If you're in deep learning and something breaks your concentration, it takes 15 minutes to get back to that deep focus. So
and our phones are designed to get our attention.
Exactly. Notifications. Everything, it feels like on our devices, if it's not, again, intentional or with purpose, it's going to be a distraction. So it's been super effective. And I feel like, again, it's challenged me. Like, I have 25 minutes to get X and Y work done. and I ended up squeezing it all in, and I felt productive. Even like the little 5-minute refresher. Okay, yeah, I'll look at my phone. I feel so good.
So that's funny because one of my notes, of course I made notes, a project manager would. I wrote on here, like, this is, I actually have a hard time with myself, is giving myself downtime and rest. And it's important.
Within your day.
Yeah, within my day, within a project, even for my team. And Aaron saying 25 minutes of focus and 5 minutes of rest is the reward. And it's important. It kind of like resets you. And because everybody has been in that place where it's like overkill or burnout. That's like the worst thing. You don't want your team to get burnout, or just you as an individual, because then you're less creative. Then you're really less productive if you burn out.
Do you think it's my immediate thoughts in doing like 25 minutes and then 5 minutes is that I hit flow and I'm going, and I'll lose entire track of an entire day, and I will pump stuff out like jewelry. I'll just pump it out. That's obviously not according to this method.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that's so nice about it. It's I would say a method to get you there. Because I think even too, if you're like, I'm locked in and I'm just
keep going.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And maybe it's at the point too where like you can know when you're like, I'm either gonna like burn out, I'm gonna be ineffective, or I'm not seeing, what I should be seeing as far as the big picture goes. I mean, there's times where like I'm working, I'm in the zone, or at least I think I am, when I should have took a step back and looked at it from a fresh mindset.
Get in too deep.
Yep, and realize, man, I actually wrote some really bad code, or like for a design or something, like, wow, that's a bad design. I should have.
It's important to take that 5-minute break to kind of take a walk, get fresh perspective. Because I've done that. I spent an entire day working on something, and it's like, this sucks. What was I thinking? Because you get in your own like vacuum mind of there's no feedback.
Totally.
And it just turns into something junk.
So just really quickly to go back to, because we've already actually kind of hit on some of these points that I wrote down, but my first one was start with an end in mind. So you have a goal and start with an end, meaning knowing what you want to accomplish, right?
Okay.
Set a reasonable time limits on those goals and whatever you're trying to accomplish, because you have to have those time parameters, or you're just going to do like what you said, work on it for too long, over design it, overthink it, whatever. So set that time. Prioritize that one. Everybody knows that. Prioritize. And that's a job in itself, right? That's hard. Yeah. But I suggest getting help with that. Find someone who can help you prioritize. Pick what's going to give you, what's the most urgent, what's going to be satisfying, what's going to be a return on investment, what's the thing on your list that's going to open more doors to something else, and kind of make those little checks on each thing, and that'll help you prioritize those things. Then start with just one and focus on that first one that bubbles up as priority. Then you can create, like, in the software world, we have roadmaps where we decide this is what's next. That's
what's so cool about like crypto, for example, is that when they launch a token or something, they launch their business, their whatever it is, and they don't have a roadmap, people won't consider them serious.
Right.
And they won't buy the token, they won't, none of that. They have to have a plan. How are they going to get there? A whole thing. So they got to start from the beginning with the big picture and then work backwards. And it's going to change. Of course, it's not going to be perfect, but at least they have, tentative plan to how to get there.
Totally. So prioritizing, I would suggest getting help with that. But, I always make this saying, and I tell it to the business, the CEOs, my boss, not everything can be a priority. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. Yeah. So you have to start there. It's the hardest thing, I think, to do. But once you do it, it makes a huge difference. We already talked about avoiding perfectionism.
Yeah.
I have that on the list.
Interesting.
Breaking up larger, more daunting tasks into small, bite-sized, 15-minute things. That's a huge one.
How would you convince somebody, because the perfectionist mindset, like, this is a hard one for me. Because that means compromise. That means, hey, at some point you're not going to get the ideal.
I think you have to have more faith in yourself. I think you I don't know, nothing's perfect. Nobody's perfect, right? And having that perfectionist mindset is just kind of like almost like an insecurity, because I think you're good enough and your art is beautiful. And I think you have to trust yourself that and be confident in the fact that like, this is done. Look how beautiful it is.
Mm-hmm.
And other people would probably think so. It's probably yourself who's not thinking that. But another thing is like, even in software, like we try to create like the MVP, which is like the most valuable product, right? Or not
the minimum viable product.
Yeah, minimum viable product, sorry. And what that is working, meets the criteria, the acceptance criteria. And that doesn't mean we're not going to go back and make it better. And maybe you do need to do another iteration of your art or whatever. Go back and fix it a little bit. But you set then you make that the second priority. Now I'm going to spend time just making it a little bit better, or fixing this and that. But know what you're going to fix. Don't go down a hole of like, I'm going to redo it.
It kind of reminds me of so music, I think, is one of the best ways to, because I mean, at the end of the day, you're putting out a song or sharing it with somebody. It's a complete project, or, you know, semi-complete. There's this idea of, you know, you're not starting entirely from scratch. You're probably starting with a couple chords that you've had in your back pocket for years, and like, oh, I'm going to kind of start with this. And then it goes from there. And then before you know it, you have a structure of a song, verse, chorus, bridge. And I think it's interesting too, because in software development, we follow a methodology called Agile, and it's moving fast. And it's, instead of like what a more previous traditional methodology is, like a waterfall approach, but then you end up causing more time for yourself when you're like, I have this perfected item that I started from scratch and I worked so hard for it. And it's hard because you're a solopreneur, but like for someone who has a customer, it's like, let me show you these phases of it. And then maybe we have to take a step back. Maybe we have to pivot here. And then eventually we want to land here. But it's this kind of like pivoting. But I almost think of like in the same way of like, hey, you're maybe sitting on some things you've had previously. And then when you're moving fast, because maybe you have your own self-dictated deadlines, you can say, okay, well, let's start from this thing that I had. Let's move. Okay, maybe it's not fitting the theme. Let's move back a little bit. I mean, and it's having that framework of like, hey, let's move fast and try to get something to production.
Get it done.
But in the midst of
And
it,
then
we
iterate
it. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of an important thing. It doesn't mean that you have to compromise, but I think it's how fast you move. Right. Because I think compromising, it always feels like, man, I'm going to put something that's kind of half-assed out there or not what entirely I vision. But I think that's what the big thing too is how do you even level up in some instances to like, hey, within time restraints and something that's, I hate to use the term like good enough, but like, okay, if this is something that is, again, having a bigger impact on the business because you spent a week on something that should have taken,
it's going to affect
2 hours.
Things,
Yeah.
It's something that
maybe, that's me.
Yeah. No, I can get
spending
that way
an
too.
entire day, working on it. It really is, and it's a problem. I think I could really learn from that, and I know that the minimal viable product mentality is what you start. You get it out there, and then you fix it
Iterate.
as you go, and it's actually better that way in that system because you get the feedback. And then you don't make mistakes that would have cost a lot of time and energy. You don't even make those at the outset because you realize things as you're doing it, and they direct you as you're building.
Totally.
So that's good. It is something for me to overcome because I'm like, I've got to make it look nice and presentable, and you know, I got to dot my I's, cross my T's before I even present it to somebody.
Right.
And I really envy some people. I was watching this guy who wrote a book, or actually had someone else write a book. It's called Who Not How. And it's a book I'm really, a friend of mine recommended it to me after we did the podcast episode, where I thought this is going to be great. And so, this guy was like really, really, really good. But his idea is that you, instead of figuring out how to do something, look to somebody who knows how to do it already.
Love that.
So that you can utilize their skills and you can save your time, and it opens you up to being able to use your time and your energy and your attention more efficiently. Anyways, but this guy, he he did like a talk and did all these different things. I looked at his website and I was like, oh, this is so ugly. And I guess to him, no disrespect, but to me, I'm like, oh, I could never put this up there.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting thing to look at because you look at Amazon, for example, Audible's app could be so much better.
Look at Amazon. I mean, the basics, how simple it looks.
Yeah. It's not beautiful.
No.
But it works.
It does the job.
And it gets the job done.
Biggest marketplace.
But that's so hard for me. Because to me, the experience is everything.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just because of what the domain I'm in. Like Amazon's not, in retail or like in creating, beautiful items, jewelry, art. Yeah, exactly. But that kind of factors into my, I guess, decision making and how I spend my time with the productions. Like I want to make something that is, at least according to me in the state that I'm in, great and inspiring potentially.
Yeah, I feel like you feel like you're sacrificing.
Yes.
And what I would actually recommend is like get somebody to help you manage your time and manage your priorities and give you. They're not saying, Chad, you have to do it within this amount, hour, hurry, and if it's done at that time. But they're giving you the time to be creative. They're giving you the time to rest. They're giving you the time and knowing during this time, I'm just going to do my thing. I don't have to think about everything else. Like my team, they don't That's
multitask. Who, not how. Because in my mind, I'm already thinking, there he is again.
Oh no.
He's back. Oh, Jesus, chilling.
I swear I heard him and I was looking around trying to see where he was.
He's looking for that chicken sandwich.
I hear it.
You hear it? Oh.
Of course.
I was like, I literally hear it.
He's like,
is it a little ASMR thing? He's going to freak us out. We're not going to be able to focus.
This mouse is giving us our 5-minute breaks every 25 minutes.
Yeah,
true.
Exactly.
He's like,
they're
you're
teaching
not
us
listening to your own advice.
I feel like we're on a roll. I was talking about the
Just getting help with time
sacrifice,
management. Yeah.
compromise.
Yep.
You were saying find somebody, find a who, and not how. Because immediately what I'm thinking of when you're saying this, I'm thinking, shoot, I feel like it's weakness.
I know, I could tell you feel
to
that
lean
way.
on somebody else or to not accumulate the skill.
Or they wouldn't cast out your vision per se, maybe too. Like if you brought someone in, they wouldn't be able to.
It's part that, and it's part like, okay, this is going to cost me some resources. And so that's always kind of just been my go-to, like, okay, if it's going to save me a little cash, which I know it ultimately costs in the end. The math doesn't add up. If you just figure out how to build a team, which is where I want to go after this. Where I get to in my mind is find someone else to do something that you should be doing yourself. That's kind of how my mind thinks. If I need to figure out the skills and discipline to be able to manage my day right and well.
That's the flip side of it is do the things that only you can do, right?
Yes.
Because I mean, that's the thing where all the businesses that fail are the people who wear every hat.
They try to do everything.
They try to do everything and they end up burning out, or they end up, one of the plates falls because they're spinning so many plates that there's an idea of like, hey, I can at least set the foundation and hand this off. But if the things that give you the most energy, like if your biggest thing is, man, I love making jewelry, I love design. Those are the only two things I want to handle. Everything else, I'm going to delegate. Those are the things that only you can do and also want to do. Like, I think there's an element of like, you got a desire, of course, like to go to work and,
I love every single thing I do.
Yeah.
That's
what's
the problem.
hard. Yeah.
Now I could simplify it down to pretty much that. Like, I'll do a seasonal collection of jewelry and then design goods and be the visionary,
Yep.
That is, what I ought to do. But it's just difficult. So with that, were you going to say something?
It's one quick thing. It's funny because my one of my next points was avoid multitasking. And I think that's what you're trying to do. When you're trying to get a project done, you can't multitask. And in fact, I do that for my team. I'm the multitasker. I'm the communicator. But we take that away from the engineers so they can do what they're good at.
Yeah.
Right?
And have exclusive focus. Yeah.
And they're not thinking about, do I have to do, do I have to sign this? All these different things that I do on a daily basis, they don't have to think about because, they're focused.
I had a question based on this. If you were needing to build a team for your project or your business, where would you start?
Where would I start? Well, I would make a list of all the things I need to do.
So put yourself in my shoes.
Okay.
I need to build a team.
You. Oh gosh. Like actually finding the people is the hardest part, right?
Is it?
I think so. Finding good people you trust and you want to be around is always difficult in any business. You know, my dad's a business owner and it's just difficult to find good help. But it's not impossible. But I think if you make a list of the things you need to do or you do on a daily basis and prioritize that list and decide, what do I don't need to do?
Yeah.
Right?
So, write down all the tasks that you don't need to be doing.
Yeah, which is there's probably plenty of things you do on a daily basis. Like I could give this to somebody else or I could, and I think even just like, I mean, I say project manager, but like a personal assistant to help you prioritize and not have to think about these little tedious things.
Yeah.
I think it's going to make your art even more beautiful, more creative because you're not having to worry about all that other little stuff that takes up a lot of time. It is using two different sides of your brain that I think they're different for a reason, you know, the creative and the whatever. But I would start with trying to figure out what task can you move to somebody else.
So what's interesting about this, because this is kind of where I'm at, is writing all the tasks out. And what's difficult is there's the things that I don't want to do. And so it feels as if I'm putting these things on someone else.
Yeah, I can see that.
Who I think is, these things maybe, I don't think they're beneath me. I'll do them. You know, I'm happy to do them all. But, you know, there are things I don't want to do, so I want to delegate them.
Right.
And so I know the answer to this. It's actually good in Who Not How. I guess it's quoted Ronald Reagan or something, but he says, and maybe it wasn't him, but it was essentially, delegation is not exploitation. That actually really helps me.
Yeah.
Because some people really do want to do the tasks that I don't want to do or don't need to do. And also everybody's not at the same level of experience. And so some people, like when I first worked at Starbucks, I had no skills. I needed to develop customer service, figuring out how to, you know, make drinks and integrate with a customer and work within a team, those types of things. I needed to learn those. I needed to start somewhere.
And you watched someone doing
exactly.
it.
And then you eventually gain the experience.
Right.
So I'm gaining this, but it is difficult for me to overcome this idea.
There's some people who get the most satisfaction by being helpers as well. And so that could be, you know, the task you least like to do, and there's more gratification for them to take that off your plate.
Totally.
Yeah.
We've been, Chad and I have been talking about starting this group, like a masterminds group, and essentially like a few of the people that we've handpicked, there's characteristics amongst every single person that I'm like, okay, those are great people because they have a managerial mindset, or they're salesmen, or they're, investors, or whatever they are. And there's some people like, they're just hustlers and they just like to help too. Like, cause I think that's so important. And I think it's hard because titles especially like can kind of muddy things, like, oh, unless I'm this title, then, and it all comes kind of down to pride.
Ego.
Right? Ego. It's always like, hey, well, I got to be this status, and I got to be, that's the part where it's so cool to be an entrepreneur, because you can even dictate like, hey, this is what I can afford and this is what I'm paying you, but your value is not entirely in that, but this is the reason why you're working for me. And then also knowing your characteristics and your skill set, you also can draw joy from, maybe eventually it is wanting to make jewelry.
Yeah.
So it's like, but can you help me with this? And then them just even wanting to be in that environment, that atmosphere, there's joy in that. And then I think people continue to progress. And I always think that there should always be a helper mentality for, really anybody, especially like, I mean, if you're a Christian, if you're wanting to serve your business or your employer, like, hey, I want to help, I will take whatever I can off your plate. And then eventually you're like, hey, I'm doing silversmithing and I'm now having someone else help me, and you're replicating and duplicating. And I think that's the thing, is like the CEOs, I always heard like some of the best CEOs you ever want to follow are the ones who are like willing to clean the toilets,
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, they don't do that forever. They're willing to. And I think you're in that mindset, like, I'm willing to, and I have for 10 years. Now I I got to get up off my knees and not clean the toilet anymore because I've got to run a business still. But it is find those people who are helpers and get deep satisfaction for being a helper.
Totally.
And then there's also other things where it's just like sometimes it is hard to find that kind of help, and maybe there are menial tasks or skills that are so niche. I think there's no shame in hiring out. I mean, I know even we talked about it, Jenae, like at some point even too, some of the startups hiring out through resources like Fiverr or
They're still
Upwork.
using, is that kind of common practice still?
We hire a lot of contractors, that aren't actually part of our company. And we just need them for a certain amount of time, for a certain project, for a certain feature. And they come on, we onboard them, and then they offboard.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's just like, you could also try to find something like that.
Yeah, that's the best. It's least commitment.
Like, think about Christmas coming up. I'm sure is that your busy season? Like holiday? Yeah. So ramping up, trying to find someone to help with those things. I mean, it's funny you say like, these are the tasks that I hate, but like, my husband hates planning things, right? But like, I can't sleep. Like,
maybe there's a part of me that just doesn't believe you. Or,
that person exists. Oh, she exists. She exists. Yes.
But there is a part of that, right?
That's funny.
But then if I think about it more, like I've played roles. I even wrote a song about it. I just played it the other day when I used to play music, because I used to play in other people's bands. I was happy to just support, never get paid. I didn't care about money. Cool. I wasn't married at the time. I could leave on sleep on couches, that type of thing. I just wanted to travel and have fun.
Totally.
And help somebody accomplish a goal. And so I played that role for a while. And the lyric was, I've been behind the scenes, chasing other people's dreams. I don't know, something along these lines. It's kind of like a pouty song, honestly. But I know.
That's awesome.
But honestly,
what's funny is I played in your band playing that song.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
was like, dang, dude, I'm way behind the scenes.
Way behind
That's so
meta. So confusing. Yeah. So interesting. Yeah. So that's good. That's really helpful. This is a good one.
Okay.
What do you look for when joining a business or a team? Like, what do you want to, like, what indicates like a healthy, something that you'd be willing to put your commitment into?
I definitely think like vibes, like the people. I mean, in my job, I spend probably 80 to 90% of my time communicating to people, sharing one message from one person to another, like kind of being a middleman in a way. And so I try to like instantly.
That's my least favorite thing to do.
It's so funny.
Yeah.
I think I try to instantly build a camaraderie and a friendship and like get to know my team. It's like the first thing I do. Like especially if we bring someone on that's new, introductions, the normal stuff. Here's what we do. But I also like just like, how are you? Like, what do you do? Like, how long have you been? I just
chemistry.
Like to, I like to know people. And this is the reason why, not just because I have to communicate to them all the time, but if I'm ever in a pinch or I have a stakeholder, a business person, a CEO, my boss demanding something, I have an easier time going to my team and being like, hey, can you do this for me? Like,
if you know them, you feel comfortable with them.
And I feel comfortable with them and we have a relationship. And then vice versa, like something's going on or like they're feeling overwhelmed or they don't like the task that they're given, they can come to me and say, Jenae, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this, or can you get more information for me? And we have to have that like trust. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, trust.
Okay.
For me, it's snacks.
So long as they have snacks, I'm in.
Good snacks.
That's a club I want to be in.
What's funny is I always think like catching wind of a good vision, I think is always starting there. Like, sure, it could be anything. Like we sell, the best toilet seats that ever existed, but here's the impact it has on the world. And I know it's always like, well, how do you do that with toilet seats? But I think there is something even to like, man, I know our heart a lot is to invest in Albuquerque.
Yeah.
So how do we create jobs for Albuquerque? Let's just make money. And then how can we give that back in some instances? Or how can we take these really cool partnerships? What's funny is like my personality type is I'm definitely a connector. I love like networking with people, connecting people, getting people all together who are just in such different places. And I think like anytime, I mean, I've started like this, I don't know, small web development software team. And like my biggest goal is like, I want to get cool people together to create cool things.
Love it.
And it seems like, okay, well, that's so like, airy and everything. But I'm like, ultimately it would be awesome though, because then if we create cool products, could it have impact on Albuquerque? Could it employ our kids? Could it employ
You're essentially defining my vision right now.
Perfect. So I already copywrote that though, so you can't take it.
Shoot, I got to start a new business now. All right, guys, that's the show. We're done. No, I'm just kidding. Once you've onboarded like team members, is there software? Is there certain systems that you would recommend using?
Gosh, there are
What do you guys
so
use?
many things out there.
He recommended Notion to me.
Oh, Notion's good. I think it's affordable and it's good for smaller teams. So I would say probably Notion,
Okay.
but we use a it's more geared towards software development.
Oh, okay.
It's called Jira.
Okay.
It's pretty expensive, but it's the industry standard and it's a beast of a tool you probably don't really need.
Okay.
But something like that, I would say definitely if you can get a software or a tool that can help you even more, that's even better.
So how much do you use it? Yeah.
Well, and I
use
think
everything.
like Jira, our team uses something called Redmine. It's this whole idea of like a Kanban board to some extent, if you want to look into it some more. But for a longest time, I know our team would just do the same process with sticky notes and a whiteboard.
Yeah.
It seems so like
Pen and paper, man.
antiquated, or pen and paper, like antiquated, but it's like, oh wow, there's something so satisfying by taking that sticky note and moving it from in progress to complete.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of the whole idea with any
love
sort of
that.
software, it's like, oh wow, it's marked as complete.
Here's the thing I would say. There's no rules. Like there's definitely a book, right, of how to project manage, but every project is different. Every goal is different. So you kind of just have to come up with your own style.
What works for
Yeah, like my teams, we're not strict to the book, but we do have things that work and we use our software every day. We meet every day. We have a 15-minute stand-up, which is, 15, 30-minute stand-up every single day to talk about
important, yeah.
priority. I know what every single person on my team is working on to the task, not the task number, but what task they're working on and what they're going to do next.
And so you're the person that's like making sure they're making progress day by day, what they need, what their hurdles are,
Totally.
figuring that side.
So like every morning we meet, I have multiple teams and we pull up this software system and we go through each person. And the idea is, what are you working on? Or what did you do yesterday? What are you working on now? And do you have any blockers? Is there anything stopping you or you have questions about? And during that 15 minutes, the goal is to align with me to know that you're doing what I would like for you to be doing, and also with the team. Ask questions to the team if there's a question, and get any clarity on something, or if you're blocked, for me to find out why you're blocked and help you get unblocked as soon as I can. Whether it's on the call, like let's discuss what the issue you're having now and someone on the other team will help them out, or if it's something they need from like the business, and that's like stakeholders and people.
Okay.
So like I'll go back to them and say, this person's stuck because of blah, blah, blah. How do you want them to do that? Requirements. But so every single day.
One thing I was going to say, because I think you said software to handle things, right? Was that the question?
Yeah, to help kind of, officiate things.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about earlier is to not be afraid of using technology. I think just to streamline things, whether that's building systems, like whether systems in place, but even to like the new hotness, of course, is machine learning, AI.
Yes.
And I think it's so important because I think
You're so good.
it's there.
Thank you so much for just going right where I need to go.
Well, I was even thinking because Chorus and I were working on a project together, and there's a photo, and I was replacing this kind of hero on the top of this website, and there wasn't enough headroom, and I was just like, man, I wonder if there's a different image. And Chorus was like, give me a second.
No way.
And he used AI in Photoshop and gave me more headroom, and it was like it took 2 seconds for him to do it, hand it over to me, and made my job significantly easier and saved me, probably an hour, maybe more.
Wow.
And I just think like, man, those things in place, Chat GPT, even if it's just like,
Use your resources.
oh yeah, use your resources. I can save some time. And again, it's back to the idea, like it's maybe not perfect, but make it good and then refine it, And I just, I think that is something that being kind of a purist and scared of it a little bit too, like, I don't want to even use it. And then realizing like, okay, you have to adopt it.
So much time.
It's going to save you so much time. And then it's like, how do you adopt it and then innovate upon it? It doesn't, people were scared, oh, it's going to take my job. It's going to do this. And it's like,
use it to your benefit.
Exactly. Use it as a contractor.
Yep, exactly. And that's a perfect call out, because I even think like for quick things, like this could be, what I paid someone, on Upwork $200 for, and this can do it for me in 2 seconds, and it's right here.
So what are some practical ways you can use AI? Because I've only ever used it in Notion, because they have an AI built-in feature where you can kind of have it edit or correct or rewrite things and expand on things, copy.
Well, in my world, I mean, I will let it write code for me sometimes. I'll say, hey, I want to be able to sort 1,000 numbers, and I need this is a dumb example, but I need odd numbers, and I need these to be unique, and I'm creating like these IDs or whatever. I'll throw it in there, and I'll like write something, but then I'll just like see what ChatGPT has, and then I'll test it. And that's the thing too, is it's not perfect, and you can keep refining it. But I mean, I'll ask it to write code for me. I'll ask it to write emails for me. I'll take an email that I'm writing to, maybe someone,
resignation letters.
All my resignation letters, please. Oh, they wrote this with ChatGPT. I had a customer actually that came to me, and I said, hey, this is a rough draft. Can you refine this? And the style is a professional email, and these are the kind of things I wanted it. It refined it. It was great. I maybe tweaked 2 things, even to like to-do lists or small things. Like this was so funny. The other day we were putting names together for the masterminds group, and so I put a bunch of names, and I just put it in ChatGPT. I said, organize this alphabetically for me.
Oh, wow.
And then just like, it's stupid, but it's like, okay, that little thing.
It'll save you 5 minutes, or not 5 minutes, but it'll save you some time.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, there's so many things that I think, we can use. And again, if time is a really precious asset, it's like, use a tool, get a little time back. I mean, even to marketing emails.
Can't make time, like I said.
You can't make time. You can't make time.
Never get it back.
You can get so creative with it. In fact, there's a course that I bought. I bought these guys. It's on Teachable, but it's basically a subscription, and they have something like 50 courses on there, and they do a whole course. They're developers. They teach how to write software. But they did a whole course on how to use ChatGPT.
Really?
It's like 15 hours, and it is awesome. And it's just like, here's some tricks. Here's how you do this. Here's how you get the most out of it. Here's how to use even image generation. Funny enough, today even too, because I have I use something called Chatbox on my phone, and I wanted for like this small business I'm doing, like make these bomber tees or bomber jackets with this logo. And I said, generate an image for me with a bomber jacket with this type of logo on the back and this kind of text. And then
so you didn't have to open Photoshop or anything?
No, I was just like, this is the idea I want to get before I forget it. And then I'll just give it to Chorus so then he can make it perfect. Yeah, do it right. Not all gross AI images. But it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I at least can flesh out an idea really quick, copy and paste it in my notes for later or whatever, work
Total
from there.
time saver. That's cool.
Yeah.
So cool. I don't know. That was fun. That's about it. That's
awesome.
I think that about hits it.
I'm going to share the last secret that'll make you a multimillionaire.
I
made $10 million in 6 days from this one secret. Just kidding.
Tell us.
Is there anything else you'd like to share? Maybe where people can find you, any plugs, anything like that?
I don't have anything that I'm super promoting myself, but I can shout out my husband, Jenae Wallin. He's a local New Mexico artist.
Check him out.
It's really good.
You have a website?
She just JenaeWallinMusic.com.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a local artist, just came out with a new album, and one of the songs on it's called New Mexico.
Awesome.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, we've seen him quite a few times.
Yeah. So his new music's probably the best it's ever been. A little bit of country vibes.
That's kind of cool too, because musician meets entrepreneur too.
Yeah.
It's cool to see, like, I mean, man, he's like, he plays like 28 days a month.
Yeah, like almost 300 gigs a year.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
He's really grinding out there. It's so funny because I was kind of really quickly, one more thing. I was telling him that we were coming here and going to talk kind of about time management and stuff. And he's like, he's like, well, what do you mean? Like, what needs to happen? And I was like, you got to sometimes give things off your plate to other people and do this and that. I was telling him, he's like, well, why aren't you doing that for me? You're giving me, he's like, I need that. And
I need help.
like,
Yeah.
I need all that. And I'm like, that's funny. You really do at this point, but yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So he can listen to the podcast and get some
Get some tips.
maybe.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being on the podcast.
This was
Thank
fun.
you, Aaron, for facilitating and helping.
Coming again.
Yes, and being part. We'll do more.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you. Bye.
Keep it wrinkled.